You're listening to the Becoming More Me podcast with me, Theresa Lear Levine. You're already enough. But if you're anything like me, you thrive when you're stretching and developing yourself, creating more of the person you feel called to be. This podcast is here to inspire and support you. Let's release the negative, reinforce the positive, and elevate our vibe together as we tap into our limitless potential to transform and grow. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Becoming More Me. I have an awesome guest here to talk with us today. Her name is Lois Hollis, and she's here to talk to us about shame guilt. Now, Lois shifts our opinion on the taboo subject and is a shame guilt educator, counselor, filmmaker, and author who actually coined the word shame guilt. Lois has always been a trailblazer, as she has helped develop one of the first kidney hemodialysis units in the USA at Thomas Jefferson University back in 1966. So incredibly cool. And I'm really excited for you to meet her. And today, she not only shows us why shame guilt has led us to believe we are victims incapable of stellar lives, but also how to make friends with our inner critic and kick shame guilt out of our lives. Now, I'm sure Lois will tell us more about this, but when she was on the verge of dying at age 55. And today at 79, she rollerblades with her grandson because she's able to heal so greatly from the shame guilt of an abusive childhood, which is amazing. And Lois was scarred with brain traumas, broken jaws, heart and liver illnesses, and suffered 30 years of migraine headaches. I suffered a long time worth of migraine headaches too, so I can feel for you there. And I also have healed for them, so I'm really excited to connect on that. Her impactful story shows us the immense power we reclaim when we release the shame guilt from our inner self. She's lectured widely, including the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, and she's been featured on podcast interviews in 15 countries. Her books, spirit readings, and films that make shame guilt visible are going to teach us how and why we need to know this trickery of shame guilt energy so that we can accomplish our dreams. Welcome to the show, Lois.
Wow, what an intro. Geez. Well, when you're 79, you can talk. You have some careers behind you.
You've got some things worth talking about.
Yeah. The best part is I'm planning my 80th birthday party at the roller rink.
Oh, fun. When do you turn 80?
In November.
Nice. That'll be right in the corner.
I'm practicing. So here we go.
Awesome. I hope it's an amazing birthday for you. I'd love for you to start by just telling us some fun information about you, where you live, what you like to do in your free time, who you spend your time with. What's your life like, Lois?
Well, it's changed quite a bit since the pandemic and, all the crazies that's happened all over the world. So I'm very sensitive to things. So, I have to be careful of how much exposure I get and so forth and so on. So I began podcast about 2 years ago. Well, 2.5. And that has, I used to give in-person lectures, and now I'm in person on the podcast. So, but it's so much more fun because I meet people from around the world. I'm very active person. So for me to sit still and talk podcast is so unusual because I do my podcast and I run around the house and up and down the stairs and then I keep going. So there is a way out of sitting in front of the computer.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear you say that because I'm the same way. Even though there's a lot of work to be done behind the screen, I've got the standing desk, I'm up, I'm down. I always just like to get up and move around. And it's kind of nice now that so many of us work from our homes that we actually can just, maybe take a quick walk or just go refresh in the kitchen or just sometimes I just step out back and just take in nature for a little bit or take my computer out there. It's good to move around. And
this is kind of
friendly.
Yeah, this is kind of mini school, but it's really important. I don't have a trash can in my room, where I do all my paperwork and, everyone has a trash can by their desk. I don't, because it makes me go into the kitchen other room to put the trash in the trash can.
That's awesome. Sometimes we have to trick ourselves into doing the things that are good for us, but when we do, then we submit to it and we get it done, right?
Yeah, and I'm a former tap dancer. I love the tap dance, so every once in a while I go into the other kitchen, tap dance a little bit, and then come back to my computer.
Oh, I love it. Dancing is such great energy to just, I love it. And
go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to add, you live in the Carolinas.
Right. And
Yeah.
it's a moderate temperature. It's not too cold or not, we get snow once in a while. We do have a mountain that you can ski in, and I do still ski.
Amazing.
So, yeah, because why not? And
Exactly. I had a great uncle who was still skiing into his mid 90s. In fact, when he was 96 or 97, he actually like rescued a kid that was about to get clobbered by the ski lift.
wow,
He broke a rib doing it, but he still got him out of there and then kept skiing.
I have a new mentor. Thank you so much, Theresa.
He's unfortunately since passed, but it was my Uncle Buck, and his love and zest for life was just, it was insatiable. He also drank heavily, but he lived to be 101, so there gotta be
Oh,
something to it.
so excited. And I love my grandchildren, and I just love life. And that's the whole thing what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We love life, but the shame guilt is what puts the I don't love my life.
Yeah.
And that's what I found out, is that it's not only, but the only problem we have is the shame guilt that puts its energy on us and affects our mind, our heart, our soul, our physical, our disease, everything. And when I found that out and began to heal, okay, I had to do chiropractic and nutrition and, all the other things. But the whole thing was I was good enough to live.
Yeah. So back us up a little bit. I'd love to have shame guilt defined for our listeners, and then also like hear your story through understanding it and all the issues that you had and how you worked through it with your understanding of shame guilt.
Well, I was, creating a new unit. I was in more surgery. I was, rocking and rolling. I was, always very active. And then all of a sudden, I got depressed. Boom. It's called like you fall down. And for me not to be active and depressed in bed thinking about suicide is like, this is like another world.
You were really depressed. You were really low.
Yeah. And then I always thought the world would be better off without me. So I really understand people that are contemplating suicide. I got to the point of guilt and shame that I should not be on the earth. It would be better without me. And here I created a kidney unit to save people's lives. I mean, shame guilt makes no sense. That's what I'm trying to say to you. Obviously, I did not know it was shame and guilt. I didn't know anything. I just knew I was depressed in bed. And I had 3 beautiful children to raise, so I couldn't commit suicide. So,
unfortunately, that's not always enough for people who want to commit suicide.
I know, but I knew that I had to do something because I love my children. I had 3 miscarriages before my 3 children. So my children, all children are wonderful. But I think I had more, after the 3.
Does miscarriages feed into your feelings of shame and guilt?
Of course. At that time in early 1970s, it's your fault. How could you do that? You're not a good bearing of children. I mean, also, what did I do wrong that I couldn't? The shame guilt on miscarriages and inability to conceive is huge, just in itself. So that added shame guilt. Shame guilt's accumulative. It doesn't get out when you say, "Oh, just get away." It don't work. You got to do the process. So the shame guilt of all my maternal problems hooked onto the abuse of my childhood. Unbeknownst to me, you know how we forget the bad things in our life? I was very abused. I had broken bones. There's one vision I came back with was I saw me like a baby, I don't know, year, something like that. And somebody was holding my legs and pounding my head on the floor. Because,
your parents?
It's a long story.
Okay.
I don't want to get into that, but it was familiar people that around me.
Wow.
So, because I was labeled an idiot child at school. I remember my parents coming in and I couldn't read and I couldn't write. So I was labeled an idiot child. This is 1949, 50. So dyslexia and other brain traumas weren't recognized. You were just called an idiot because you couldn't read. And I was in a Catholic institution. They told my parents they would keep me in school, but they would not teach me because I was unteachable and had to sit in the back of the classroom. Because be a child. They took me in front of the class to read. So I hold the book. I remember that. I don't remember many things. I remember reading, and all the words start moving. I came to learn that's called Irlen syndrome, IRLEN.
Okay.
Because the brain traumas, you can't focus in on the words, so words move. So I asked the teacher, who was a nun, how do you stop the words from moving? Which is to a 5 or 6 year old. Yeah, I want to read, but the words keep moving.
And how would you know that other people didn't see like that?
How would I know that? I got hit in the face because I said something that they thought inappropriate. So the next day, I'm very creative, obviously. So I turned the book upside down because, if it can't do it one way, you might as well do it the other way, right? Makes sense to me, Theresa, right?
Yeah, just trying a new way.
And I said, the words are still moving. And that's when they called me an idiot child. And I couldn't read, and I worked everything. I have pictures. Everything I did was perfectly backwards. I mean, like perfect. It couldn't be better penmanship, but all the 2s were backwards. All the 4s were inverted. Everything was inverted. So I was unteachable.
Oh my goodness. That happens with like so many kids. Like that's so common. That's
well, especially in that time, if you know what I'm saying, there was no such thing as disabilities or things of that sort. So, but the good news was they left me alone. And I had a near-death experience too, somewhere along the line. I just remember not here and then here. But I always had a sense of another world. Yeah. Like, I guess, my spirit, you could say. So my spirit and I talked all the time. And I passed every test. And then I got better and better. I tap danced. And I think the tap dancing, the right brain, left brain.
Yeah.
So I healed myself with the help of spirit so that I could actually go to college and do extremely well. And I was like top of the line, very smart. I never thought about it because didn't remember the abuse.
Did things at the time you were in college, did it feel like things were getting better for you?
Oh, yeah. I was fine. I was tap dancing. I was working. In those days, you work and pay for your tuition, right? So I was working as a nurse and paying for my tuition. And then I got the offer to help.
And in these days, no matter how much you work, you still probably can't pay for your tuition.
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, we're talking, you know what I mean? So, so I was, moving along, and I worked private duty because it was easier than working on the floors while I was going to school. And someone said, "You are an excellent nurse." And I said, "Thank you." They said, "Oh," and they liked how I did things differently for patients. So they wanted me to work in the kidney unit, and that's where I helped with creating the first kidney unit. That was awesome. Then I started lecturing all over the country and doing all sorts of things, and became the consultant for kidney dialysis and wrote books. And then I said, I think that's enough after 10 years. And then I got married and want to have children, but I had 3 miscarriages because of all the abusive stuff happening and all that, I didn't know, but eventually I raised my kids and I had migraines, It was just the kids,
They are debilitating too for anybody.
They are debilitating. That's why, I was divorced, but financially okay. And
so you had the 3 children and then you went through a divorce?
Yes. They were very young, like 2 and 3 and 4. And it was,
and that had to have been difficult because divorce was definitely not something that anybody or hardly anybody did at that point.
Exactly. But it was mandatory for me because the safety of us was involved. Anyway, that's another long story.
Yeah.
But
no, I feel for you as somebody who's been through a divorce also, and my parents went through a divorce when it wasn't really something that people were doing either. So yeah,
but it was the best situation. My life was in danger. Okay, and I was a mother's mother. I mean, my kids were so we were fine. We moved and we were fine, and it worked out. But I couldn't work because I was full charge of the kids, each went to a different school, and then, piano and dancing and the food and the cooking, and, I had no family around, so it was me and friends. So, you understand, if you're a full-time mom, you're a full-time mom.
Yeah, but I got 4 boys over here, and my husband travels a lot. So even though we're very happily married, there are many times when I'm trying to juggle all the things on my own.
Yeah. So it's, like, what do you do? I'm a mom. And, and I have migraine headaches, so it doesn't give me the fortitude of, doing something else because of the stress and all that. But I did not know I had brain traumas. I just had, that kind of stuff. So anyway, eventually they grew up, college, great, stellar kids. And then I got depressed, like boom. And I went, I'm a nurse. Husband's ex-doctor, doctors in the doctor. And then I go to all these doctors and they said, well, Lois, you really only have about a year or 2 to live because your kidneys are not functioning. Your heart is got to have a leaky valve. And I was crippled with scoliosis like this. I couldn't breathe. They were correct. But somehow I didn't see that.
And this was in your mid-50s?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm like, I don't know. I just don't have the right person yet. So my friend invited me to visit her in the West Coast, and I went, okay, kids are in college, it's okay. So I did, and I met a doctor there who was a chiropractor healer person. He was like not just normal kind of chiropractor, because she had moved there because of him, because of a strange situation. Anyway, so he said, I can help you, and I cracked up and laughed. He said, but you really have a lot of problems. You have to live close. I'm going, yeah, but I live on the East Coast and you're on the West Coast. Anyway, so eventually, long story short, I moved because it was like die or move. Die or move. So I'm sitting in a rocking chair with my kids in college. What should I do? And they said, you're really crazy, Lois, to move across the country for a doctor. There's like so many doctors. So I go, but this doctor's different.
That's just a matter of perspective. You could be just as crazy for sitting at home with your cats and allowing yourself to die.
So I moved. And then when my kids came in from college, I came back to the East Coast and was mommy and then went back. Anyway, long story short, I healed. In fact, the chiropractor and I eventually married.
So, worth the move, every bit of it, right?
Every bit of it. And that's who just walked out the door, my husband.
Awesome. Beautiful.
So, it's a beautiful story. But anyway, the story is I was healing and I was walking and talking, but I still had the emotional problems. So obviously, and you got to fix them, right? I mean, you got to deal with them. They don't just go away because you're got 50, They get worse. Anyway, so someone said, Lois, what do you do about shame? And I went, I don't know. Never heard that word. Never heard that word. And here I am, a bucket of shame. Yeah. But this is true.
Something that people can easily identify. It hasn't been until more recently when there's been, more prevalent shame researchers and things like Brene Brown and stuff that really get it out there. And like you now, because you get it and you get it out there, that people are like, that's what I'm
So I went to the library like any person would, and, no computer, 1999, something like that. And Bradshaw's book said Sickness of the Soul. And I went, So I played with that a little bit. And again, because I was able to communicate with other dimensions. That's why I created this and I created that, because I just know things. I can't say how it happened. It just knows. And through my experience, I know. So people say, where did you find that info? I said, it was given to me. Believe it or not, I don't care. But so I start realizing that shame guilt is an energy coming upon us. And I was so excited because I didn't have to go to counseling for anxiety or anger or depression. I just had to get rid of shame, guilt, because I then knew that shame, guilt energy turns all our positive emotions to negative ones. Compassion turns to depression. Intuition turns to anxiety. Passion turns to anger. How cool is that? And then I learned about shame guilt by working with myself. Other people came to me and said, Lois, what are you doing? Because I got well. And I lived in Sedona, which is a place for people healing.
Yeah.
And we do what you're doing. And I went, I don't know, I guess so. I'm just talking to myself because I got tired of talking to therapists. I would say, hi, depression, how are you? Hi, anxiety, how are you? And inner child work.
Yeah.
And then that's where I found the shame guilt in the inner child of me. See, it's deep, deep. And the people that came to me, they got well too. Like that. And I said, this is awesome. And then they sent their mothers and grandmothers and cousins and friends to me, and they healed too. It didn't matter if they wanted more success in their business. They tried to conceive pregnancy. They had a relationship problem. They had a kid problem. No matter what it was, information about shame, guilt, and how to get rid of it, how to identify it, healed everything. I went, whoa, I guess that's what I do. And then I start working with that and be invited to seminars, and they go, oh, Lois, we don't talk about shame guilt. It doesn't exist. If we don't talk about it, then it doesn't exist. They said, you are such a good speaker. Why don't you call yourself a happiness coach or a joy? And I said, well, that's very nice, but you're not going to get happiness or joy until you kick shame guilt out. Oh, we don't say those words, Lois. So the pandemic happened and everybody says, oh, I think there's some shame here. And then I got very popular.
I'm sorry it took that happening and everything else for it to be acceptable for you to be able to toot your horn about this very, very important thing. And yeah, it's amazing how many people, I've heard so many stories of other people that talk on similar topics where other people wanted to change the way that they
narrative
about it or change the narrative or whatever else so that it seemed more upbeat, more positive. And it's like, well, what can be more positive than transforming the negative?
Hello. Now to bottom line this right now, the energy shame guilt only has one defect.
What is it?
It dissolves in detection. Whoa. Yeah. So the fact that we're just talking today, showing
light shined on it.
And it goes away because shame guilt needs us, like a leech needs to drink your blood. Sorry to be so graphic, but that's really the truth.
All right. That's good. That's a good analogy. I like that.
Shame guilt energy needs your light. This goes back to the spiritual. It needs your light to survive. When you no longer accept it, it goes to the next person's light.
Yeah.
It can't. Shame guilt needs you. You do not need it.
Yeah. So shame guilt causes all sorts of negative emotions, especially self-sabotage. So how do we, in your opinion, befriend that inner critic?
Okay. Well, the inner critic is part of us. We can't tap it away. We can't say, shut up. That only infuriates the inner critic more. Now, the inner critic is your shame guilt producer. Its job, he or she is your shame guilt producer to keep you safe.
Yeah.
Don't do that. It's too much of a risk. Don't do that because you'll fall off the cliff. Don't, do this. Don't do that. The inner critic learned from culture. Now people say, oh, I don't really understand that because my parents were loving and all that. This is a book I found. It's called How to Be a Jewish Mother. Mm-hmm. I got it for $1 at a thrift store. And it actually, this is 19.
Is that a serious book or is it a humorous book? Or is it both?
I think they're trying to do humor to the horrors of it. Making guilt work. Now,
I married into a Jewish family, so this is all going to be very funny to me.
So this is in print. Lois is not making this up. And I talked to the editor. I want to get clearance, permission to talk to people about this, because they gave him credit. But it's so important. Underlining all techniques of Jewish motherhood is the ability to plant, cultivate, and harvest guilt. Oh, control guilt, and you control the child. Let your child hear you sigh every day. If you don't do that, they will not know how much you suffer. But if you sigh every day, he will know you suffer because of him.
Oh, Lord have mercy. Oh.
So you can't blame anybody.
I have so many feelings about all of that, Lois. That's some very triggering and also very humorous and hopefully somewhat at least outdated. Goodness gracious. But I know far too many people that are still living in that narrative too. Ugh.
I mean, explain where you heard the story. I mean, it tells you how to cook and when you feed them, what you should do and how you should respond. The basic theory is proper. If properly practiced, you will have this motherhood is an art, a complex network of subtle, highly sophisticated techniques in controlling your child.
I can think of so many better ways to apply something as like mind control.
Okay, in my book, I can't remember where I found it, but in 1920 something like that, they had many visionaries.
Sure.
Locke, L-O-C-K-E, if you know of him. He's very prominent in his, he wasn't like president or something, but he was a philosopher that helped society grow. He stated that we must raise children to be respectful and so forth and so on. And the current practice of spanking, hitting a child when they were disciplined has outworn its effectiveness because they keep hitting a child and they become more aggressive. And you can see that and you understand that, that if you keep beating a child, they become resistant and hateful and angry, right? So he advised that all parents, when they beat their child, to add shame and guilt to their behaviors, and then it is very effective to control your child. John Locke, L-O-C-K-E. And I have a whole paragraph on him that shows that is how it began more effectively to use the element of shame and guilt. If you use shame and guilt by itself, it's not as effective. But if you use it with beatings, it's much more effective.
Yeah. Goodness.
This is true.
Oh, yeah. And it's so much more common, like in the times that you were raised in. Like that was pretty
well,
much the narrative.
That's true. But today it's more subtle.
Yeah.
So you can't see it as well.
But I think there's also a lot of people that are open to the idea that
of it, but it's like still
our children are not ours to control. They come through us. They don't belong to us.
And but you're like me, but there's a lot of people that aren't. And I'm Roman Catholic. Well, I'm a recovered Roman Catholic person. And the church now states that guilt is a moral virtue because it makes us repent for our sins. Because if you're not guilty, you will not repent for your sins. I say there is no sin.
Yeah.
So that's what messed me up.
We see eye to eye on all of this, Lois. My goodness.
So I remember I'll just do this really short. This is when I was, I don't know, 7 or 8. I was remember standing in line for confession. And like I was the fourth one out or something. And I start crying and crying. So this teacher's sister came over and said, "Why are you crying, hon?" And I said, "I can't find my sins. And you said if you don't repent for your sins, you'll go to hell." Now, I'm a daughter of Polish family, 100% Polish. We live very well, but it's closed. It's, families were more closed than they are today. So what did I do wrong? What sin did I do? I cleaned the house. I help my mother with cooking. I do my homework, what I can, go upstairs and go to sleep, come down. That's my life. How did I sin? I can't find my sins. And I was right. I can't see where I disobeyed my mother.
And how sad that you set out to look for reasons that, you were somehow flawed in ways that you never were.
And I cried because I'm going to go to hell because I can't find my sins. I will never forget that experience. So here I am, 55, being shameful and guilty and so forth and so on. And I'm, today I understand why it happened. I can't blame my mother, my father, my priest, or the government. All I can blame is shame, guilt, and to know that that's your enemy. So that's my crusade, is to tell people shame, guilt doesn't belong to us. It's a foreign energy that's put upon humanity to make us stupid.
Well put. So tell us a little bit about your book, when you wrote it, when you released it, what it's called, and how it helps people.
Oh, it's called Emotional Revolution Equals Evolution. And it's a book to read and reread, because the more you read it, the more the shame, guilt unconsciously leaves, because you know your enemy. Remember Sansoon, know thy enemy? The more you know the tricks of shame, guilt, the more you can avoid them. So that's why I call myself an educator. We do not know what shame, guilt is. We only know its horrors, but we don't know how it acts. Aha, this is what we have to learn. It's called You're Fighting War, Know Your Enemy.
Yeah.
And that's what my newsletter that I send, that's an ebook, 500 questions, one answer. I show you 500 ways how you shame yourself and others shame you, and you can't take it on. So we have to learn. We have to teach ourselves what we did not learn.
Yeah.
You can only master this when you become smart. You have to learn what was not told to you. It was told to you this way.
Right.
And I'm telling you as this way.
Yeah. And what a shift that is when you can show up in that new way of thinking with those new beliefs and shed all of that weight that so many of us have been unnecessarily carrying around.
Now people say, "Oh, I don't have any shame. I have guilt once in a while, but no shame." Okay, so I say, have you ever been depressed? Have you ever been anxious? Have you ever been angry? Oh, yeah, tons. All that is shame, guilt. Yeah. Shame, guilt causes all negative emotions. So people say, they can't, like me, you can't identify it. But if you have depression or anxiety or any negative emotion, you have shame, guilt. In fact, I have it in my book. Depression, sadness, procrastination, underachieving, joke telling, anger, indifference, embarrassment, arrogance, cheating, PTSD, eating disorders, bullying, moody, phobias, shyness, lying, suffering, hate. I mean, that's all shame, guilt.
Beautiful. I love you. Like graphs and things in there too. I love that. It's well laid out so people can identify the emotions that.
And they go, "Oh, cheating doesn't have any shame, guilt. It's cheating." But when you analyze it, it goes down to, I don't have enough, so I have to steal from somebody. Anger. All of them are shame, guilt, hatred, everything. Everything shame guilt.
It can all come back to that same source. Yeah.
So I say to people, if you have a home and every time it rains, you got a hole in the roof in your bedroom and one in the kitchen and one in the dining room. And every time it rains, you have to clean it up. Okay, the sun's out and you're fine. It rains the following week and you got to clean it all up again. So wouldn't it be smarter to cover up the holes in the roof?
Would be. Yes, that's amazing. If people want to get a copy of your book or learn more about you, what is the best place for them to go, Lois?
My website, loishollis.com, LOISHOLLIS. And I also have my free films on there. It shows you what shame guilt looks like.
Yeah. I watched
so
that.
You get a visual.
This interview and it was really cool. So that was amazing. So thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you for sharing all of your own personal stories and anecdotes. And I personally really enjoyed the excerpts out of that awful book and the way that you were able to turn them all on their head. So thank you so much for being.
Thank you, Theresa. It was a delight. Good. Thank you. And thank you for your beautiful jade.
Oh, thank you. And thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. If you loved this episode, please share it with a friend or post on social media and tag me so I can personally connect and thank you. Until next time, keep taking bold and brave action steps towards becoming more of who you want to be in this world. You are capable, you are worthy, and you are enough. Keep shining your light.